Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Cars and Coffee with me, your host, Kenny Brown. Where over the next hour or so, I will share some of my vast experience and knowledge in the automotive industry and experience I've gained in professional motorsports and answer your questions. We always talk about what you want to learn about. We got some really great subjects this morning, which have basically come through the Speed Therapy Society. If you're not a member, think about joining. It's a great group of like-minded people. So today, what we're going to talk about, studs and lug nuts, and that kind of comes from a question that Christopher asked. He's having problems with his 550, his lug nuts. We'll talk about in a little bit. We're going to mention Hydroboost, our trials and tribulations with Hydroboost, and also what I think is the coolest radiator in the aftermarket, our triple pass, triple thick, triple cool radiator. And then we got really, really good questions today from the Speed Therapy Society members. Okay, now I think we're going to start with, I'm going to extrapolate on a quick question from Christopher. Now, Christopher is one of our longtime members. Also, he's a graduate of the Speed Therapy Academy. And Christopher comes to us from Bulgaria. And when we were doing the Speed Therapy Academy, he had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to attend class, but he was there every single week. So his question today is, by the looks of it, the Dorman 611 257 won't work on the OEM studs. He's talking about lug nuts. My OEM lug nuts are gone, gone, gone. Caps are moving and super hard to remove, so we need to figure out a different lug nuts for the car. Any recommendations are welcome. Well, I think based off of what he's saying, that the cap's moving around on Ford on some of their lug nuts, they actually put like a chrome cap over top of the steel. And it's fine if you're only taking your wheels on and off 1 or 2 times. But if you're like doing track days and working on your car, those wheels are coming on and off all the time. The caps loosen up and they're not very good. So yeah, we're going to talk about wheel studs and caps. So let's start with wheel studs, and why, if you're getting into performance and doing a lot of track days, I kind of recommend at some point going to better wheel studs. Now the factory studs, you can see, are about that big, not very long, just long enough to put a wheel on and put a lug nut on there. But if you've got like an aftermarket wheel, it might be a little thicker than factory, you're going to be really short on lug nuts or on threads to put the lug on. So what we use on all of our track cars are Arp Long Studs. These are pretty much the industry standard for wheel studs. They're super strong. They've got this bullet nose, which helps you get your nut threaded on there. And it's especially if you're using wheel spacers or wheels that are thicker than the factory. And fortunately, one of another Speed Therapy Academy alumni, Steve, sent in, he saw what we're going to talk about today, so he sent in a few pictures on his car, which I'll get to in just a minute. So why don't I just jump into those right now? Let's see, I need to click a few buttons here. And there we go. Okay. Here's kind of a funny story. We send out a newsletter every week talking about what we're going to talk about in the subject matter. And I guess because this week the headline was studs and nuts, a lot of the emails went into junk mail. So if you didn't get our weekly email, look in your junk mail or spam, because somehow the powers that be thought we were talking about anything other than studs on a Mustang. So this is on Steve's car, and you can see he's got open lug nuts, which are the only way to go, and extended studs. And here's a good shot of that. And because of one of the sets of wheels that he uses, he has to use a spacer to clear the big brakes. We got one of these days we have to talk him into getting our Pro 4R race brakes. Anyway, but he has to run a spacer for that. Well, because of that, you need longer wheel studs. And you can see that how much longer the stud is to get through the spacer and then bolt the wheel on firmly so that you got actually threads sticking through the lug nut. And we always use open lug nuts, and we'll get to that in just a second. But here's some examples that he sent in of like really premium lug nuts. And you can see that these are extra long. And it's kind of cool because they've got this little knurl thing on the end, which is really handy for screwing the nuts on. And you can see it's pretty easy to grab. They're super strong. I think this might be Gorilla brand or something like that. But anyway, that's just one of a lot of different kinds of aftermarket lug nuts we can get. Now, getting back to the long studs. Now, something else that I highly recommend you do is you're going to be taking your wheels on and off all the time. And what happens is you've got steel on steel. You've got a steel stud and a steel lug nut. They're always on each other, which is going to create friction at some point. What I always do, I don't know if you can see that, that's just a little bitty dab of anti-seize. And here's like the lug nuts we use are open lug nuts, and you can see right through. And these are heavy duty. But because you're putting the lug nuts on and off all the time, you've got steel on steel, having that little bit of anti-seize. As you screw it on there, does a couple of things. Yeah, and you can see just how that little bit kind of made its way all the way around the stud. So here's what it does do. It reduces the friction between the lug nut and the stud, which means that both are going to last a lot longer. Secondly, because it's somewhat of a lubricant, you're going to get a much better torque value, and you don't need to really crank the living daylights out of your wheels. I mean, we usually torque in about 90, 95 pounds with anti-seize on there. But you'll find that your lug nuts and your wheel studs will last a lot longer with just a little bit of lubrication. If you don't have anti-seize, just a drop or two of oil will do kind of the same thing. Although I like anti-seize because that's what it's made to do. So that's kind of like where we're on studs. And and as far as Hurstifer, we've got a couple different kinds of lug nuts that we can get. The ones that you got from the factory are not open lug nuts. They're kind of sealed on the top. And also, we did a little bit of research, and Ford Racing actually has a kit, a wheel hub with ARP studs and lug nuts that you can buy the whole thing from Ford Performance Parts. That's got the hub. You can see a little picture there. It's got the hub, the studs, and the lug nuts. So Hertzford just need to get a hold of Rich, and we'll come up with some. There are some good lug nuts for the 550. They're a little different. Most of the regular Ford lug nuts or studs are half by I can't remember what, but they're ½ inch, and I think the 550s are 14 mil by 1.5. I think. Anyway, they're a little different size, but we can get lug nuts for those. So moving right along, that takes care of number one. Let's see what is on my list. We got studs, cool radiator, coolest radiator in the market. Okay, cooling cars on track is really, really important because cars are engineered around expelling a certain amount of BTUs based off of normal driving or driving in traffic with the air conditioner on in the summertime. They sometimes really fall short when you're on track and just running the living daylights out of your car. You're creating a lot of heat. That heat has to go somewhere. And oftentimes that your radiator just isn't quite up to the task. Well, we have a solution. In fact, this is a solution. Every one of the cars I built get this triple pass radiator. A number of years ago, we got together with Fluidine and got a peek over the top about doing a radiator that was really superior to anything else that was out there and worked really well. And this is it. It's a triple pass, triple core. You can see how thick it is. I mean, it's 3 times thicker than most radiators. But the really unique factor is it's called triple pass. Now, a regular radiator is a single pass. You got the hot water coming in the passenger side high, and it goes through the radiator, comes out low on the driver's side. Well, if you look at that here to here, oh, gotta get there. Never mind. From cutting across the radiator, water is going to take the path of least resistance, so it's going to have a tendency to want to go like straight from corner to corner, not necessarily always getting into the corners and exposing the water to air. With the triple pass, what it does, now a long time ago in stock car racing, they started using what's called a double pass, which comes in one side, makes a U-turn, and comes out the other. It's mostly for GM cars because they're just the way they're set up. That works really well. For a Mustang, you couldn't do a double pass because everything's on opposite corners. So we came up with a triple pass. So what triple pass means is it comes in on the passenger side high, goes across the radiator, makes a U-turn, comes back across the radiator, makes another U-turn, and goes back across the radiator again. So there's no dead spots where the coolant is not flowing really well, which means you get a lot more exposure, air to water exchange, heat exchange. The other thing is we use a lot different type of fins. We use a smaller fin. There's more surface area. We actually have 18% more surface area than a normal radiator fin. So that's why they cool really, really well. Now that particular one is for a 550. And the nice thing about them is they're total drop-in, total OE replacement, no modifications or anything. All the brackets and buttons are on there, just drop it right in. We've got them for the 550, S197, and the SN95. A really, really easy upgrade, and it's really good insurance, especially if your car's running hot. We had one of our customers, GT350 up at Road America, was continually running hot, and we put one of these radiators in, and it drops something water temperature, something like 30 degrees. So, I mean, they really, really work well. If you've got a supercharged car, absolutely, positively, you need a better radiator. And that's all there is to it, because you're making a lot more heat. Okay, so we talked about the cool radiator, the triple pass. We got some really good questions. Let's kind of move on to the questions. And we've got some questions from some new members, which I'd like to welcome you. Looks like Rob, Tim, Maggie, and Dylan have sent some questions in. And if you haven't been with us for a while, just joining us, you're a new member, again, welcome. And obviously, my name is Kenny Brown. And the reason we started this, Carrie talked me into this more than a year ago, is to kind of like get real information to people. And we started with just answering a couple of questions that's really grown and expanded. But I started this because the information that I see on the internet or what people talk about in the paddock are just, some of it is so wrong and so far off. I tell people the two worst places to get information about your car is the internet and the paddock. So, I mean, I've got, I don't know everything, but, for doing this for like 50 years and, won 7 national championships, racing Mustangs and in SCCA Pro Racing. Plus, I worked on teams at Daytona 500, Indy 500. I mean, I've done a lot. So I don't know everything, but what I do know, I like to share. If you haven't been with me for a while, I do artwork. This is Jimmy Clark at Zolder, and Formula One's going to be at Zolder this year in the beginning of September. I can't wait to see that. And of course, my toolbox. That toolbox has been with me for over 40 years, and it's been just about every major racetrack in North America. So it's got some real miles, and I still use it every day. So anyway, let's get to our questions. Let's see. Okay, Omar has a question, and it also tags into part of Maggie's question. He wants to know the 3-link versus 4-link suspension for a Mustang for road racing. What are my thoughts on what are the pros and cons of both? Well, both are good. It depends on what kind of a 3-link is pretty much like S197. That's a great suspension, easy to work with, easy to make good geometry. Depending on the 4-link, if it's like an SN95 4-link, it's not that good because, again, the geometry is everything. That's what makes my car so really handle like like nothing else, is I have been focusing on suspension geometry for years, and I've got it really worked out for Mustangs. But anyway, so I thought that would be a real good subject for next week. We'll talk about rear suspension geometry. So look, next week we're going to dive into that a little bit more. But it doesn't 3-link or 4-link. I mean, they'll both work fine. It boils down to geometry. Let's see. Okay, Rob wants to know about bump steer for a road course. What are my thoughts? Is there a happy medium for left or to right? Actually, there should be no difference on bump steer left or right. They should be exactly the same. Now, when we talk about bump steer, what are we talking about? Okay, when you're going around a corner and your tires are turning, if the bump steer is off quite a bit, and that happens often when you lower a Mustang, the bump steer kind of goes away. What happens when you hit a bump, then the wheel will start turning offline. You know, you want to be going this way, but you hit a bump, might go that way or that way. So getting the bump steer worked out is just makes it drive a lot better through the corners. Now, the way to do that, there's 2 ways to do it. You know, the easy way is I go to my computer, geometry computer, and figure out where the tire item needs to be to get minimize bump steer. Or you can sit there with some plates and jacks and move everything up and down and keep moving the tire rod ends up and down until you get the bump steer out. Or if you got an S197, I can make it really easy for you. This would be a standard tie rod end of an S197. And this is our extended S197 tie rod end. And by adding this extra, it actually gets the bump steer really close. So you don't have to do all the work to figuring it out. Now, the easy way to know if you need to improve bump steer or if your bump steer is right, it's called the super easy way, is with your car at ride height, either in jack stands or on the ground, take a look. And if the lower control arm and the tie rod are not like parallel, they're going in different directions, then you got a bump steer problem. If they are pretty close to parallel, then you're going to be pretty close on bump steer. That's kind of like the easy way without going through a whole bunch of gymnastics to try to figure it out. But that's 197. Just get these. We've got them. They're inexpensive. They're OE quality, and they improve bump steer just like that. Pretty easy. So okay, that's bump steer. Okay, now Sal, what's a good brake temperature delta front to back? There is none. And the reason I say that, because the front is always going to run really hot. On my cars, we're running like 1200 degrees front rotor temperature max, and the back all depends on a number of things. Number one, the suspension geometry. If you're running just a stock Mustang suspension, the delta is going to be really wide, really big, because you're not using, the back of the car jacks up under braking. You're not using rear brakes very much. If you've got my rear grip kit, excuse me, this is like allergies and asthma is starting early this year. If you've got my rear grip kit in the back, we change the geometry, put a lot of anti-lift into it, so the back of the car doesn't want to pop up as much, which means you're using more rear brake, which means the temperature go up. Now, a long time ago, we were doing like some development work with the rear brakes. And I don't have these numbers exactly. I'll just kind of give you a range because it's been a long time since we did this. But with the rear grip kit, I mean, we're seeing like in a stock rear rotor, we're seeing brake temperatures like in, let's say, like the 500 range, 500, 600 range. But we went to our upgrade kit, which is a 14-inch two-piece slotted rotor. That's a really good way to improve your rear braking. Is with a 14-inch slotted rotor. It uses OE caliper, just moves the caliper out, and it makes a big difference in rear leverage. Then when we did that, then the brake temperatures went from like the 500 range up into the 800 range, which meant we're using more rear brake. Now, one step further, when we went to full-on race brakes on the back, then all of a sudden the temperatures went right up to like 1,000, 1,100 degrees. So it there's a lot of variables in what the delta is, and it's really not about the delta, it's about the brake temperature itself. And we're going to, the reason I mentioned that is because I'm looking at my notes here, we're going to do, we have been trying to get a mini workshop in brakes, But it's just we got so much going on. We're going to actually do it in a Cars and Coffee in September. So look for that. We do a little mini workshop on brakes because brakes are really important, and you need a lot of things you need to know about brakes. But anyway, temperature, the delta, it depends. You know, if you got a stock rear suspension and a stock rotor, it's going to be pretty wide. If you got to a bigger rotor, it's going to narrow. If you go to a rear grip kit, it's going to narrow even more. And if you go to a full-on race brake, it'll narrow even more. And one thing I throw in here with the Mustangs and the 8.8 rear axle, it's definitely not recommended to put a big brake kit on the back without modifying the rear axle. And the reason being is that it's called a C-clip, which means the axles go in, they're held in place with little C-clips. But because of that, there's a little bit of axle movement, not a lot, but just a little. And if you were to put like a big brake kit on there, the calipers are hard mounted, the rotors are hard mounted, and what happens is you go around corners, that axle will just move in and out a little bit and push the rear brake pads out. And it's called brake knockback. And what happens is next time you go through a little windy bit, next time you go to hit the brakes, brake pedal will go to the floor, and you got to pump it back up because it's knocked the brake pads back. So we've got a couple remedies for that. One of it is putting like 9-inch rear axles on the back, which are firm mounted, they don't move. But you got to be really careful trying to put race brakes on an 8.8 without making adjustments to the C-clips. And you absolutely cannot run C-clip eliminators like drag racing guys do. But anyway, the easier way to upgrade your rear brakes is with our 14-inch two-piece slotted rear rotors. Makes a huge difference, especially if you've got a rear grip kit. And what's going to lead me into, that'll come up next week when we talk about the suspensions. Let's see. And then Tim said he had his first track day coming up at Pitt. And Kerry said there was a lot of chatter back and forth and people recommending some things. But I don't know if anybody said brake pads. Brake pads are ultra super important if you're going to the track. I tell people street pads for the street, track pads for the track, and never the twain shall meet, because your operating temperature on the street is way less than operating temperature on the track. In brake pad compounds, there's 3 elements to it. It's heat, friction, and wear. And you take like a street pad that's designed to run under 500 degrees, and you go on track and you have 800-900 degrees, all of a sudden the friction will go down and your wear will go up. And too many times I've seen people show up for the first track day with stock brakes, and some of them don't even make it through the morning before they burn their brakes up, or you go down straight away, they can't stop, and they run off the track. So brake pads are super important. And I know there's a lot of people who try to get away with high performance street brake pads. Well, if it's your first time, maybe you might get by with it if you're not really using the brakes. But you start using the brakes, it's not going to work, because they only go up, the compounds only go up to about 800 degrees. And like I say, my cars, I'm running 1200 degrees of rotor temperature. And I need a brake pad that's going to be the medium operating range has got to be somewhere in the middle. And the pads, I use a 400 to 1600 like in a Hawk, or the newer pads that we're using, I'm really, really happy with. The G-Locks, I'll get something that's like 1800 degrees and starts at 200 degrees. So it's a really broad range. And we can actually get those brake pads pre-bedded. You don't have to waste a whole session. We'll talk about brake pads and bedding in our brake. We'll do a little mini brake seminar. Let's see what else we got. Okay, here's Maggie. Oh, by the way, if you're just joining us, Carrie isn't here to remind me. If you're just joining us, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, where I try to share my many years of experience in building cars and building really great cars and professional motorsports. And we're answering questions from the Speed Therapy Society. If you've got questions right now, you can send them in the comments, and I will answer them in the end. Do the best I can. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer, I'm not going to blow smoke. I just don't do that. You go on the internet and there's so much smoke you can't even see anything. So anyway, let's say Maggie. It's a kind of good question. She said, offset struts, coilovers for larger wheel fitment on the S197, yes or no? Torque arm versus third mount. I'm guessing she's talking about like a 3-link. And we'll talk about that next week. And those have been with me for a while, and especially those who've been through the academy know I do not have a very high opinion of torque arms. My personal opinion is torque arms for people that do not understand rear suspension geometry. We'll get into that a little bit. And like in the Speed Therapy Academy, we spend 2 weeks talking about suspension geometry, and I share a lot of my secrets. In fact, when we do the academy, every week there's a PowerPoint presentation, and we go through, and that's available to the people taking the academy. In the resource section, they can go back and reference again. They can print it off. The only segment that is not available to print off is when I talk about geometry, because that's something that's pretty special. And those who've been through the academy can attest to that. So anyway, we'll talk about that next week. The rest of it is APEC EC7 18 by 10. Can I fit 305s with on the rims, all 4 corners with stock struts? Okay, that's another good question. If not, can I use the strange single adjustable for 2007 Shelby GT500 for tire fitment? Do I need camber bolts with coilovers? There's a lot of questions there. Let me start with the 18 by 10 and 305s. I would not recommend putting a 305 on an 18 by 10. To give you an idea, wheels versus tire sizes, I mean, there's an optimum size for a tire on a wheel, which gives it, your perfect surface for flat on the ground. But then also tires will have like a minimum and maximum wheel width that you can run. To give you an idea, a 275 is a 9.5-inch wheel. 285 is a 10-inch wheel. 295 is 10.5, and 305 is an 11. Now, some 305s will run on a 10-inch wheel, but think about it, if it's designed to run on 11 to 11.5, what you're doing is you're pulling those sides in, which means you're starting to curve the outside, not getting a real good footprint. What I would kind of recommend, if you're going to get the Apex, I'd get like the 18. Actually, I prefer 19s. There's a lot more better track tire selections in 19s than 18s. It's really, the selection of 305s and 18s is pretty thin. But on all my cars, I'll tell you how I set up my cars, and even the GT500s, all of them, is 18 by 10 front with either a 285 or 295, depending on the application, 285/35, and 18 by 11 rear with a 305. That seems to work really, really well. And that's something I'd suggest you take a look at. And if you want to run a square setup all the way around, our square setup is 19 by 10 with 285/35 in all 4 corners. Although the GT500, I'd recommend, if you could, to run a little bigger wheel and tire on the back, just because you have so much torque, it's hard to get it down. And with all that torque, you need a rear grip kit. We'll talk about that next week. Let's see. The other thing is KB specs strange single adjustables. Well, the strange, my KB specs strange are actually double adjustable on the front. That's the only way we can get them. And as far as an offset, I think our JRZ struts are offset a little bit, and JRZ uses a 2.25-inch spring, so it's a little narrow in diameter than the 2.5. But with a 18 by 10 285, you're not going to have a problem. So anywhere then, as far as camber bolts, that just kind of depends, on how much camber you need. And we do camber based off of tire temperatures. We'll probably maybe do another tire temperature thing coming up. If not, we should have some links somewhere on some of the information I give on tire temperature. Tire temperature is super, super important when you go to the track. It's like who was going to the track? Tim is going to the track. Now, the first time out, it might not be that important, but after that, you need to start looking at tire temperatures. Tire temperatures are the quickest, easiest way to improve your car's performance on track. You'd be surprised how much a half a pound difference will make. But we probably need to put our stuff back up on tire temperatures. That's super important. In fact, when we sell we have a lot of track customers, and if they're running my stuff, they're free to call me and ask me questions on car setup, or the car's doing this, the car's doing that. How do I adjust it? Very first question I ask, what's your tire temperatures? Because that'll tell me a lot. Because I don't make any adjustments on my cars at the track until after I've got the tire pressures dialed in. My process is in the first session, I get the tire pressures right. Then I work on camber. And then after that, then I'll look at additional adjustments, whether it be sway bar or shocks or whatever. So, yeah, we should maybe we'll have to do a tire temperature workshop coming up here. But in the meantime, I don't know if Carrier Brad can put something up on some links to our tire temperature stuff. Okay, let's see. We got pump steer, 3-link, and torque arm. That's going to be, we're going to talk about that next week. And then, Alessandro, I don't know if you're here today, Alessandro. You got a question, it was last week or the week before, about you're having problems in corners. Oh, yeah, there's another good thing. You want more information, set up a 15-minute consult with me. There should be a link. Anybody that's done it has come away just blown away at the information I can share with them. So if these questions that are a little more complex, just set up a 15-minute consult, and I'll be happy to talk with you and share as much as I can with you. Alessandro talked about he was having a problem with in cornering. He was getting fuel slosh and he was losing fuel pressure because of the saddle tanks. It was S197. And my recommendation was that fuel cells, because you want to know if you put a fuel cell in, well, that's a big job. Putting a fuel cell in, you got to cut the back of the car out. You got a whole bunch of plumbing. There's quite a bit that goes into that. My suggestion was to get fuel cell. Inside the fuel cell, it's full of foam. This special foam that it just kind of holds the gas. It doesn't let slosh back and forth. So that was my one recommendation. But it was something in my head. I couldn't. It was like bothering me. I had to think about it. I remembered what I should have remembered. If you Google Holley Hydromat, it is a really, really slick piece of kit. It's for the fuel pump pickup. It's just a mat, and it doesn't even have to be. All it has to do is one teeny bit touching the gas and keep fuel pressure. In the demonstration, the video online, they actually hold the fuel pump up out of the liquid, so the mat's drooping down, and it still pumps. So it's that's something else you might take a look at, putting a Holley Hydromat in there. It must be some sort of really, really strange black art technology, but I don't know how it works, but it's pretty darn cool. So we got through everything. We've got through the suspension next week, bump steer, brake temperature, and we're going to do a brake workshop in September. Let's see, first track day, Tim, the brake pad's really important, and also start learning about tire temperatures. And then Maggie, we kind of covered her. Let's see, you don't need camber bolts if you can't get enough camber in the top. Camber you adjust based off of tire temperatures. We'll have to
Kenny, I think that Maggie should probably attend your Transform Your Driving Experience workshop that's coming up later this month.
Where's it coming from?
So that might be really good for Maggie. We'll be putting a link in the comments on that.
Yeah, that's on my last page here. Okay. We're going to be doing another Transform Your Driving Experience workshop August 23rd. And that'll be followed by the fall, I guess you call it semester, Speed Therapy Academy that's going to start on September 13th. Speed Therapy Academy is everything I talk about on Saturdays and in the workshops. We go, it's like 15, 16 weeks, something like that, Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. And I really take a deep dive. I take one subject per week, and we call it immersion because I take a deep dive talking about it. I mean, we dissect shock absorbers. There's 2 weeks just on suspension geometry and what makes a car fast. I think there's 2 weeks on managing aero in the car. And yeah, there's just lots and lots of stuff. And anybody that's been there, been through it, will attest that it's. I mean, you'll come out, when you come out, the whole idea is you go to the track and you know exactly what you're doing. You don't have to ask anybody. You don't have to listen to the wrong information. You know what to do. You know how to do it, and you just do it, and you become the guy or the gal. So that's coming up. Let's see. So I've been through all the questions. I guess that does get me to the last page. You jumped ahead of me.
Oh, did you? I don't think you answered Dylan's question. He was a last minute call
Oh,
in.
yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Dylan came in at the last minute. And he's a new member. So he wasn't on my regular sheet. I was here to print off. So I almost forgot. Dylan, I apologize. I almost forgot. Let's see. And where are we? I'm a new member of the group. Welcome. Still planning stages to determine what I want to do with the car as far as events. However, they're wondering what I prefer on the SN95 brake setup, Hydroboost, vacuum boost, or manual brakes. I'm thinking of running either street with occasional track or track with occasional street. I'm going to start at the back and move forward. You are absolutely, positively thinking the right way. Because one of the things we'll talk about in the workshops is when you're building a car, and one of the first things you need to do is figure out what kind of car you're building. Is it a street car? Is it a street track car? Is it a street car or a track car or a race car? Because the contenting, the type of equipment are different for every one of those things. So there actually is a difference in street track or track street cars. So, I mean, you probably need to get on the schedule, set up a 15-minute with me, and I'll talk about that with you a little bit more. But the subject of Hydroboost, vacuum boost, or manual brakes. Okay, vacuum boost has been around since forever, and everybody's seen a great big vacuum canister on brakes for vacuum power brakes. When an SN95, before it came out with the 4-valve, it was so wide, there was not enough room for a traditional power brake setup. So they went to something called Hydroboost, which has actually been in the industry for a long time. And what Hydroboost is, it doesn't use vacuum to boost brake pressure. It uses hydraulic fluid from the power steering pump. So they have the power steering pump, use that for steering and for brakes. And it's a much more compact package that sits right on the firewall there. Well, Roy, one of our longtime customers, he's racing a 99 Cobra in NASA AIX with a dry sump Daytona prototype motor. Anyway, he's been having issues with his Hydroboost. Sometimes it works fine. Sometimes he has power steering and no brakes. Sometimes he has brakes and no power steering. Well, and we finally got to the point where this can't be. So right now I'm in the process. I thought I had more information for you today, but I don't. We're converting it to manual brakes. And the brake conversion, the power steering is by itself, is separated. The brakes are now manual. Haven't had a chance to drive it because, like with all race cars, there's always something to repair. And we found a small oil leak, and nothing on a race car is small because one thing led to another, and actually we're having to redo the three scavenge hoses on the dry sump. And what that is, with the dry sump, there's no oil in the pan. There's the 4-stage pump, and 3 of those stages are scavenged to actually suck all the oil out of the pan, put it back to the oil tank. The oil tank puts it in the pressure side of the pump, and then it goes into the motor. So you always have oil pressure no matter what. Anyway, because, I mean, each one of these has to be an exact, precise fit. And we sent them out to some place to rebuild them for us, and we got them back. And one was a 1/4 inch too short, and the other was a 1/4 inch too long. It's like you can't make them fit. So we're having to do a workaround and redo that. So I'm more on that next week. But I'm pretty sure this will work. He also has like the our Kenny Brown Pro 4R race brakes on the front, which anybody who's put the Pro 4R brakes on are just blown away by how good they are. And it's a package we put a lot of work into with Bear. It's full-on race package, has basically all the benefits and features of like a Brembo GTR, which is like 8,700 an axle set, something like that, for $3,900. So it's a big difference. Plus the front brake pads are an inch thick, which is nothing wrong with that. So anyway, hopefully we'll be able to drive it this week. We'll get the hoses sorted out. We'll be able to drive it, and I can give you a report next week. Okay, so I'm not a fan of so based on that, I'm not a real fan of Hydroboost. And vacuum boost, you can't use a vacuum boost if you got like a 4-valve motor. So it's like it's leaning toward the manual, and I'll have more information on that next week for you. And then, like I say, street track or track street, you're on the right path. Set up a 15-minute, and we can talk through that. And I can at least try to help get you on the right path. So, Carrie, thanks for reminding me that. Yeah, Carrie's usually here, but she's nursing a back, so she's home. So she comes to us from afar. So it's kind of nice because I don't have her holding up all these signs when I make mistakes and telling me what I forgot to say. So, but the same token, I forget to say things. So anyway, so
I'm grumbling on the other side, going, "Oh, he forgot to say that. Oh, he forgot to say that."
Yeah. So yeah, going on my last page. So if you got any questions, send them in. This is going to be the time. Let's see. Okay, so next week we're going to talk rear suspension tech, 3-link, 4-link, and torque arm suspension, and also the my rear grip kit 1. And I might even mention rear grip kit 2, which is beyond phenomenal. We're going to talk about rear diff cooling. Okay, we're going to be doing this week. We're going to be doing a new rear diff cooler package for 550 cars, which we'll have some information on that next week. If you've got an IRS car on track, absolutely positively have to have a rear diff cooler. I mean, all the heat that diff generates is going to be packed in this little aluminum case, mounted in rubber, and it had no place for the heat to go. So what happens? It burns up the diff. And with an axle, the live axle, you get all this the metal and all this mass to absorb the heat. So we'll be talking about that next week. It's the Transform Your Driving Experience Workshop. Mark it on your calendars, August 23rd. And then Fall Speed Therapy Academy starts September 3rd. And I guess Carrie's got some early bird specials on that too. So we'll be talking about that in the future. And then we're going to do, in Cars and Coffee in September, we're going to do like a mini brake workshop. So I think I got through everything. Yeah. So we are on to questions. Do you have any questions today? Did I lose you? Carrie? I'm not sure what happened. She was there a minute ago. Okay, I'm going to have to try to figure this out on my own. Okay. Let's see. Looks like I have a hard time seeing these questions. That's why I always have Carrie read them for me. It looks like she got disconnected. Let's see. Will 99 Cobra still have ABS? Actually, no. The reason is because through all this hullabaloo between the Hydroboost, brake steering, he actually eliminated ABS, thinking that might be a problem. So it's going to be straight manual. So we're putting a brake bias adjuster in the cockpit for him. Trying to see. I don't see all these, which makes it kind of hard for me. Okay, Hirschberg saying something about did I do that? I must have done that. Let's see. My rear brake calipers with annoying knockback over bumps. What options upgrade rear calipers? Or something different in the brake pedals bracket? That's kind of interesting. You get knocked back over bumps because those are factory brakes on there. Boy, I'm kind of there's for race brakes. On race brakes, what sometimes we do is they have like these low pressure springs that will sit inside the caliper and kind of hold the pistons up. But for a stock Mustang, the easiest thing to do is just we've got a 6-piston caliper set of 550s, 6-piston 15-inch rotor front, 6-piston 15-inch rotor rear. I don't know if you want to go to that extreme, but that's a really sweet brake package. We use that quite a bit. I'm trying to I just don't know what happened to my support staff here. Are they floating brake pads? Most, I'm not sure what it means by that, but most brake pads, well, OE brake pads sometimes have little brackets behind them, not brackets, little metal things behind them. But I don't know that. Boy, this is really turning. This is tough for me. I'm not used to doing this, and okay, it's windy. Yeah, so there you go. Wendy's kind of confirming, I said either lose your brake pads, you got no brakes to drive home. I have no idea what happened to Carrie. So this is getting really difficult for me. Okay, Chris is saying he gets 900 degrees with his rear grip kit on track, which is that's pretty good temperature. Joe Johnson, great Radiator. I have one of my GT350. Already answered that. Roy already eliminated his ABS on his own. Okay. As you can see, I'm really struggling here, but I'm keeping my cool. I have a friend who... Okay, Joe has a question here. There it is. I have a friend who would like to know the equation to use to determine the spring rate difference on coilovers versus springs on a control arm. I don't know what kind of spring it has. Okay, that's something actually we go over in the academy. As you know, we're talking about springs and shocks, and there's something called motion ratio. And the motion ratio is, when you've got a strut, the strut's out here and you got a spring on there, you know what that spring rate is. When you've got a spring on the control arm, it's not at the end, it's in the middle. So there's something called a motion ratio. It's basically you take the distance from the inner point of the control arm and the outer point and measure where the spring is, the inner point, and you divide the outer into the inner, and you get a percentage, and that tells you a percentage of the motion ratio. Example on the rear of an S197, because we've got a lot of people that have gone up in rear spring rate for the new rear grip kit 2 with the K-link going way up on spring rate. They've got coil on axle. So the formula for the rear end is strut versus axle is the multiplication of 1.38. So that's the motion ratio difference. So if you're looking for, you take the spring that's on the axle and you multiply it by, divide it by 1.38, it tells you what it would be on the strut. You take a strut and multiply it by 1.38, it tells you what it should be on the axle. So that's something that we go into in a little more depth in the Speed Therapy Academy. Well, I'm having a hard time here. Oil temperatures, how much does the chill pad help? It does help with oil temperature. There's kind of a ratio between oil and water. And along those lines, in the academy, we also have, every other week, we have something called master class, where one of my friends, expert from the industry, will come in and talk about their subject that they have a level of expertise in, and then in the academy, people have a chance to ask questions. But the academy is done in Zoom, by the way, so it's just like everybody's there and everybody can talk. We had Ryan from Florida come in, and really, really nice piece on cooling. A lot of good information on radiators, oil coolers, the relationship. So if you knock the water temperature down, you're going to pull the oil temperature down too. It just, one helps the other. Well, I'm having a real problem here. I think any of the questions that I can't see or can't get to. Let's see, also profile brakes. Will they work with 18-inch wheels? Yes. That's what Roy's running his car. He's got the profile brakes and he's got 18-inch wheels. And as far as working with the wheels, it depends on the wheel itself. If the wheels are built for big brakes, not a problem. If they're not, you have to check. And we do have templates. You can download a template that will look something like this. Look something like that. But you set this on the hub of the wheel, and if this clears the wheel, then you got room for brakes. If it doesn't, then you might need to do something else. So sometimes you have to add a spacer or something like that. But that's like one of the templates that we have, and you can see if before you buy the brakes, make sure the brakes clear your wheels. So, okay. Well, I'm kind of running out of things to do here without my trusty sidekick. I saw something pop back on. I don't know. There's a picture. Is there a voice with that picture? Hello?
Hello.
What happened? Did you lose a connection? Hello? Yep, she was there. Now she's gone. She must be having connection problems. Her computer is dead. Oh. Well, that explains it. That's what those little things that plug into the side, that kind of helps prevent that. So, let's see, Rory's saying get well soon, Carrie. Well, we're hoping she's getting there. We had some doctor stuff yesterday, and we got some doctor stuff next week. So, hopefully she's on the mend. I don't know if she made it back yet or not. Nope, still hasn't made it back yet. She got a dead computer. Okay, I'm kind of delay time here. Maybe she can get hooked up again. Maybe she can't. So, okay, so I guess I'm going to have to. Hertzberg, yes, you did miss the lug topic. I will go back and review for you. What I said is it sounds like you've got the factory lug nuts with a lovely chrome on the outside. Actually, it was one of the first things we talked about. Little chrome cover on the outside, and you start taking them on and off, and they just loosen up in their junk. What we talked about is for track days going to a long wheel stud, especially if you're going to run a wheel spacer to clear brakes. And if you do run, anytime you do track days, you want to put a little bit of anti-seize on there so that you don't have metal on metal. You can get a better torque value, and both the lug nut and the stud will last a lot longer. And we talked about open-end lug nuts, and actually we can get lug nuts, good lug nuts, open-end lug nuts for the 550 cars. And I also mentioned there's Ford Performance has a Mustang wheel hub kit that has ARP studs and open lug nuts. You can get them right from Ford Performance. It's a whole package, the whole bearing pack with studs and lug nuts. But yeah, see, I don't know if I can pull up the thing that Steve Calistini sent in. I still can pull that up. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because Steve sent, and Herschel knows Steve. Herschel was in the academy along with Steve. Steve said we're going to talk about, so he sent this in for his car. As you can see, he's got the open lug nuts on there. And he's running the long studs because he's got a spacer to clear the brakes. One set of wheels that he uses won't clear the brakes, so he's using a spacer. And you can see the long wheel studs in the spacer. And this is something that he sent in. This is one brand of open lug nuts. I don't know if they're Magard or Gorilla or something like that, but there's a number of different really good open lug nuts that we can get, and we did find some for the 550 cars. This design you use like a regular socket, and it's got this knurled section, so you can just very easily grab it and turn it on. But also, what we found is, let's see, I'm going to click here for me. There's also what we found are some lug nuts that actually, instead of like a hex for a socket, they actually are splined, which probably is way more positive. Instead of having a hex, you got splines, just slides right on, super locking permanent. So yeah, we can come up with better lug nuts for you. So there's a couple of different options. The Ford Performance hub set with long studs and nuts, or we can get some open lug nuts, performance grade, that'll be a lot better than the ones that you've got on the car right now. And of course, don't forget that little bit of anti-seize. It just makes all the difference in the world. Okay, I guess we've lost Carrie permanently, so I'm going to have to wrap this.
I'm here.
You have no idea what you just did to me for the last 15 minutes.
It looks like Brad filled in fine. My computer died. I had moved it to the recovery room and was actually laying down on the job doing this, and my battery went dead. So just for a little more information that you don't need to know, but now all of a sudden your voice is coming through our main screen TV and not through my computer. So I had to move stations. But anyway, so I'm in the living room now, guys, everyone. So how did you do?
Well, I fumbled. I tried to see questions. I really don't see questions very good. And I fumbled. And I tried to see questions again. I fumbled some more. I tried to kill time. Kept calling your name. So I don't know if I've got to all the questions or not. As you know, I don't always see all the questions on my screen.
So Brad, why don't you just put up a yes or no if you got to all the questions?
Well, I'll take that. Maybe a little exaggerated, but I'll take it anyway. So.
Okay, well, this is the last call. If Kenny didn't answer your question, why don't you add it to the chat right now, and then we'll ask it. It takes him about half a minute to get your question. So again, if he didn't answer your question, just let us know. And, we always have fun on the show. I don't think it was much fun for you, though, was it, Ken?
Hey, I kept my cool. I'm cool. I was doing good. I was fumbling, but I was fumbling in a cool and calm way.
So that was fun.
Let's just backtrack, and we welcome all our new people. I hope I got your questions answered. If you have more questions, send them in, or the 15-minute consult. I strongly recommend that if you really want to know more. There's a lot of things I can't really get into very deeply in just like a couple of minutes in Cars and Coffee. That's why we do the 15-minute consults. Because really, my whole object of this is give you like real quality information based off of experience, not what I heard from this guy or read somewhere else. So, and I hope I've helped you out. So if you've got more questions, send them in. Or like I say, guys like Dylan, you sign yourself up for a 15-minute consult, and we'll talk more about that. But you're already thinking in the right way. So I applaud you for that. And then Rob and Tim and Maggie, glad you could join us. And Maggie, part of your question is going to get, hope I answered your question. Again, if you've got more, except for 15-minute. But next week, we'll get into the 3-link, 4-link torque arms. And I can't get too deep into the geometry because that's part of the Speed Therapy Academy. But we'll kind of glaze across the top and kind of talk about the differences between the three suspensions. And why, right now, my preference, the S197 with the 3-link is, it's just such an easy suspension to create really good rear suspension geometry. And anybody that's put my rear grip kit on, rear grip kit 1, which is with the rear roll center lowering kit, that just blows them away. And anybody that's put on the new rear grip kit 2 with my patent pending K-link rear suspension, which is phenomenal. We've got people now putting that on and not taking off tenths of a second on their lap time, but taking off full seconds, and a lot of them. I think David out on the West Coast has a Boss 302S, and at I don't know what it's called now, Sears Point, Sonoma, they keep changing the name. When I raced there, it was always Sears Point. He's just in the process of getting his license. And the difference between the Ford Racing suspension on the Boss 302S and my AGS 4.5 suspension, and that was the whole thing. He got the JRZ RS Pros, the double adjustable remote canister, the K-Link in the back. The difference was he improved his lap time by 8 seconds. So then the Steve Calistini, I think, from reverse grip 1 to reverse grip 2, picked up another 4 seconds on his lap time. So, when it comes to Mustang suspensions, look no further. I mean, if you really want to make your car handle, and we'll get into more of that next weekend. So, any late questions come in?
Yeah, Kenny. Brian West said we missed one of the break questions. It was about knockback. And it was on Hurstifer's car, so it was
I said, Hurstifer's car, he said he got knocked back over the bumps. And I'm never really experienced that with an OE brake package. Like on race cars, sometimes when we have mild knockback issues on race brakes, they've got like these real low grade springs that we'll put inside the piston to kind of just put a little bit of pressure on it. Knockback.
Yeah. But I can't find the real question, so I don't know. We'll have to answer it next time, Hurstifer.
Yeah. So my best suggestion is we got just killer 6-piston, 15-inch rotor brake package for 550 cars, both front and 15-inch rotor at the rear. 6-piston. You want killer brakes. I mean, that is the bomb. So. Okay, well, we can get more clarification on that. And if there's no more questions, I guess people have had enough of me singing and dancing. I didn't sing, but I danced a lot. So hopefully Carrie's computer won't die on us next week, and I'll have a little more support when I need it. So if you're in the academy, I will see you Tuesday evening. And Tuesday evening, we're getting into troubleshooting, diagnosing, and track stuff. What to do when this happens, things that it could be, and things you could do with. This is where it really starts getting good. We've taken the whole academy so far is learning about all the nuts and bolts of everything and how everything works, and now we're going to put it in application starting next week. So I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Everybody else, I will see you next week. We're going to talk about some suspensions, and I talk about rear suspension, and I can't get into geometry too deeply because, like I say, I spent years working out the best geometry for Mustangs, and geometry is all about how much tire you put on the ground at all times during all driving events, and it's that simple. And that's why my cars work so amazingly well, is because I've got for the 197 Mustang from AGS 4.0. That's Advanced Geometry Suspension Systems, 4th generation. Gen 1 goes all the way back to 1987 in the Celine Pro Endurance cars that I engineered, built, and managed to 4 national championships. That was like AGS 1.0, and it's progressed all the way through with every advancement in the chassis. I've advanced the suspension, so it's like the DNA goes back to 87, but right now it's the best, except for 4.5 is the newest one, and that replaces the roll center relocation kit with the K-Link, which is amazing. So I think I kind of babbled on enough. I think we'll, Academy guys, I'll see you Tuesday night. And everybody else, have a good rest of your weekend, and send in your questions. I mean, I talk about what you guys want to learn about, and that's the whole premise of the Cars and Coffee, is to share what you want to learn about. I'll try to share my knowledge on that. So with that, we'll see you all next week. And again, welcome to our new members of the Speed Therapy Society. I hope I was able to help you.